Runicks. We've all played against them by now, and for those of you that have somehow forgotten the experience, let me briefly jog your memory. Can't use multiple attributes, can't use multiple types, can't use multiples of the same type, can't summon, definitely struggling to summon. Negated monster effects, definitely struggling to activate monster effects. Negated spell and trap effects, can't attack, and worst of all, you get to watch as your entire deck slowly disappears into the void. Does that sound familiar? So just a few hours ago, I saw this tweet from MBT, and whilst I completely agree with the statement in that Master Duel is pretty damn cringe to play at the moment, I think it'd be kind of nice if rather than just continuously complaining about the art type, we just had somebody show off what counters exist for it, as there is plenty of counters that exist for Runick, and plenty of counters that are easily played in most deck lists, so I thought, hey, why don't I just show you guys how to completely decimate this deck? Let's show you some counters. Now before we get into the counters, just a reminder, if you're enjoying today's video and find it useful in any way, remember to leave a like on today's video and consider subscribing to the channel down below, especially if you're a returning viewer, as apparently about 50% of the people watching this are not even subscribed to the channel, yet nearly all of you are returning viewers who have seen my content before. So if you find yourself keep coming back to the channel and see more content just like this in the future, remember to hit that like button down below and consider subscribing. Alright, let's get into it. Cosmic Cyclone. Now this card, I'm pretty damn sure every single person watching this video, their nan, their dog, their aunt, sister, brother, anyone even closely related to them, probably has some sort of an idea of what this card does by now, as it's been a pretty, standard card for a long time. It's just target one card on the field, banish it by paying 1,000 life points. It's pretty simple. But I think a lot of people don't realise just how good of a counter this is specifically against Runick, because Runick, as you guys know, is pretty good against most standard backer removal. This is because, obviously, whenever you try to activate something like a Harpy's Feather Duster or a Lightning Storm against a Runick field, filled with floodgates, you just want to wipe that board, they just activate from their hand a quick play spell, summon out their Hugin to the field, which is from literally any one of their quick play spells by the way, summon it to the field, and all of a sudden, your cards just do nothing, as Hugin just banishes itself, protecting its entire field from any of the destruction effects. Which is why Cosmic Cyclone is so damn good, because simply, it banishes. Hugin cannot defend against a quick play banish effect. And because it's a quick play spell, you can use it at just about any moment during your opponent's turn, whenever you think the right moment is. So for example, you can use it at the start of the turn to get rid of your opponent's field spell, so they can't activate any of their Runick spells from hand. You can use it in response to one of their floodgates, if you know there's a particular floodgate that just completely screws over your deck. You can use it in response to the field spell's effect, stopping them from drawing any cards, which can be absolutely just insane against Runick, because if they don't draw 3 cards a turn, they're probably, chances are, going to struggle a lot at having follow-up on their future turns. Even if they have a couple of floodgates active, they're probably going to struggle to actually recover and get their resources back, and will probably just lose the game. Now, Runick does technically have a soft counter to this in running Munin, but Munin doesn't work in the same way that Hugin does, where if you activate Cosmic Cyclone, they can't respond by summoning that card out to then protect it. It just doesn't work that way. It's not a continuous effect like Hugin's effect is. So if you activate Cosmic Cyclone, they can't chain respond, so you'll still just banish whatever card they have on the field. And Runick players don't just start with Munin on the field already. Nobody does that. Most people don't even run the continuous spells. There's like little to no reason to do so, unless they're just outright cheating and can see your hand. So there's no real counter that Runick has to this. In my opinion, it's just by far the best counter to Runick, simply because it's also a very versatile card. Drawing this card in most matchups, not even specifically against Runick, is still going to be a fairly decent draw, as most decks, especially something like Branded, does end on some sort of back row you probably want a Cosmic Cyclone to get rid of. So, in my opinion, this is by far the best counter to Runick. Cards that just stop your opponent from banishing anything. These cards include things like Chaos Hunter, Imperial Iron Wall, or Artifact Lancier. All 3 of these cards simply just stop your opponent being able to banish stuff, which against Runick is obviously pretty damn good when their entire game plan is to just deck you out by banishing your entire deck. Now keep in mind, this doesn't just stop them banishing cards. it stops them using cards, as something like freezing curses, which is normally used to target a monster and negate its effects, can't use that effect at all, as they can't use the part which banishes cards, which is part of that effect. So you literally can't activate that card at all outside of using it to summon a monster to the field. And this goes for all the Runick spells. They just cannot be used for their standard effects. Of the 3 cards I just mentioned, the one I recommend the most for specifically the Runick matchup would definitely be Chaos Hunter, simply because this card is just summonable during either player's turn, whether you go first or going second, and it's a continuous effect, so it lasts infinitely, whereas something like Artifact Lancier would not, and Imperial Iron Wall is obviously a card that's a trap card, so it's only really useful if you're going first, or useful just later on in the duel after your opponent's already banished half your deck, so just not quite as good. So Chaos Hunter, the best for the Runick matchup, but if you're looking for a card that's good against a lot more decks, Artifact Lancier is probably the better one in that case, but do keep in mind that Lancier is only usable during your opponent's turn, so against Runick, if the turn passes back to you, well, they're going to be banishing half your cards again, so do keep that in mind. Also, I just wanted to quickly point out before moving on, whether it be a Brandon in red or a Cheng Ying, most decks in the game do have some sort of banish in them, where having a card that you can summon out that just prevents banishing is going to be pretty damn good against. So don't think this is just a purely Runick counter that's going to be completely dead in most other matchups. Generally, most decks do like to banish, so it's not going to be completely dead, but definitely not as versatile as something like Cosmic Cyclone. So you may have noticed that Runicks like to run Dimensional Fissure, which is a card that just banishes any monsters that are sent to the graveyard. But that's the thing. Monsters sent to the graveyard. The only reason they can run this card is because it's specifically used against monsters. Runicks actually hate effects that banish cards from the graveyard, since, well, their entire deck is putting cards in the graveyard to then recycle back into their deck and draw more cards. If you banish the stuff they're putting in the graveyard, they're kinda screwed. Their entire deck is based around the field spell, where if you activate a Runick card, it can then take Runick cards from your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, then draw the same amount of cards. So if you activate a card like Dimension Shifter, or a card like Macrocosmos, any card they're sending to the graveyard is banished, so then they can't activate their field spell to shuffle cards back in, because there's nothing to shuffle. So they just lose instantly as soon as they've run out of resources, which will be, well, basically their first turn. The only real downside I see to actually running these cards is, well, obviously, they affect your own deck as well, and most decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like to use their graveyard a lot. There's a reason that basically only Flundereeze is running Dimension Shifter, despite it being an insanely powerful card. It's just, you can't really afford to run it in most deck lists, so it's kind of a niche sort of counter, but if your deck list can run cards like Macrocosmos or Dimension Shifter, this is going to be an insane counter against Runick. This is for the people that just really hate Runicks. There are a couple of deck lists out there that are really good specifically against Runick, because banishing their cards is just helping them. So a deck like Thunder Dragon, for example, which can also be played in Dragon Link, run cards like Roar, as well as many other Thunder Dragon cards, where if you banish them, you'll just give your opponent a free search, maybe a free special summon, plenty of effects that just are really helpful to them. So you like Runick matchups, they're going to give you a billion searches. Likewise, you have Metaphys, which is very similar in that banishing their deck will just give them a trillion searches, special summons, just a lot of stuff that is pretty damn useful. So if you hate Runick a lot, keep that in mind. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, remember to leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And if you have any own counters or any other counter matchups or decks that you know are really good into Runick, feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments down below for other people to see. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Laters.
Hey, big brother, can I watch SpongeBob?
Shut up, Mokuba. I'm busy flagging YouTube videos to compensate for the fact that I have an extremely small penis.
Oh.